My apartment was never truly quiet. Even at night, the city breathed through thin walls, sirens, distant laughter, the hum of traffic bleeding into the silence. But that night, I woke to a sound that didn't belong. A shuffle. Soft. Closed. At first, I thought it was my upstairs neighbor moving furniture again. But when I opened my eyes, I realized the noise wasn't above me. It was inside. I sat up, pulse racing, ears straining. A faint creak followed, then the unmistakable thud of someone's foot on my living room carpet. Someone was in my home. My instinct should have been to grab my phone and dial 911. But instead, I reached for the nearest object on my nightstand, a ceramic lamp, and gripped it like a shield. I crept toward the doorway, breath caught in my throat, my bare feet whispering across the wooden floor. When I flipped the switch in the living room, light burst across the space, and everything stopped. He froze. Tall. Broad shoulders. A black hoodie. A backpack half-zip. One gloved hand hovering inside the drawer of my TV stand. His face was half covered by a dark mask, but his eyes, those were uncovered. Sharp. Piercing. Blue. We stared at each other, locked in a silence so charged it felt like the air itself would shatter. "Don't scream," he said. His voice was low, urgent, but not threatening. More like he was asking. I should have screamed. Or swung the lamp. Or run for the door. But I did none of those things. Instead, I lowered the lamp slightly, still trembling, but caught in the strange gravity of his presence. "What do you want?" My voice cracked, betraying fear and something else I couldn't name. His hand dropped from the drawer. His chest rose and fell in rapid, shallow breath. "Not you." The word stunned me. Not you. As if taking me, hurting me, was never even part of his plan. For reasons I couldn't explain, the tight knot in my chest loosened, not completely, but enough that I could breathe again. He didn't lunge. He didn't advance. He just stood there, caught in the glare of my cheap ceiling light like an animal trapped in headlights. And the more I looked at him, the less he resembled a criminal, and the more he looked like a man with nowhere left to go. My grip on the lamp weakened. I lowered it slowly, careful not to provoke him, though something in me already knew he wasn't here to hurt me. "You picked the wrong apartment," I managed. A flicker crossed his eyes, something like shame. He straightened, shoulders tense, but didn't move toward the door. "What's your name?" I asked before I could stop myself. He blinked, startled. "Why do you care?" "Because if I'm going to be robbed," I said, swallowing hard, "I'd like to at least know who's doing it." His gaze searched mine for a long moment, as if testing whether I was serious. Then, finally, he exhaled. "Alex." I nodded once. "Daniel." The strangest thing happened then. The tension shifted. The fear didn't vanish, but it changed shape. Instead of terror, I felt awareness. Of the silence stretching too long. Of the way his eyes kept holding mine. Of the fact that he could have bolted, but didn't. My apartment, usually small and dull, suddenly felt like the stage of something I couldn't define. Neither of us spoke. Neither of us moved. And yet, everything between us was alive. Charged, fragile, dangerous in a way I didn't fully understand. Finally, he pulled the mask down, as if tired of hiding. The sight hit me harder than I expected. A strong jawline. Stubble shadowing his face. Lips pressed into a line, betraying nerves he tried to hide. And those eyes. Up close, they weren't just sharp. They were exhausted. Human. Whatever I thought a burglar would look like, it wasn't him. I should have yelled. Should have forced him out. But instead, I asked the question that lodged itself in my chest. "Why are you here, Alex?" For the first time, his eyes softened. He shook his head slowly, as though he couldn't find the words. Or didn't trust me enough to say them. The silence thickened, but not with hostility. With something heavier. Something I couldn't put into language, but felt deep in my bones. Maybe it was insanity. Maybe loneliness. But instead of calling the police, I lowered the lamp all the way and set it down on the table. He looked at me, startled, almost incredulous. And in that moment I knew this night wasn't going to end the way it was supposed to. Whatever happened next, fear, danger, or something else entirely, was already set in motion. And it began with the way he looked at me. I hadn't expected him to stay. But Alex didn't bolt for the door. He stood there, caught between defiance and defeat, his eyes flicking from me to the window like a trapped animal weighing its options. "You should go," I said finally. My voice wavered, softer than I intended. "Before this turns into something worse." His jaw tightened. For a moment, I thought he'd ignore me. Then, with a slow exhale, he slipped the backpack from his shoulder and let it drop to the floor. The thud echoed louder than it should have, filling the room with a strange finality. "I'm not here to hurt you," he said. "I know." The words surprised even me. They came out instinctively, as though I believed him before I had any right to. We stared at each other again. My heart was still racing, but fear was no longer its only fuel. There was something else now, something heavier, sharper. Awareness. I gestured toward the couch, my hand trembling just enough that I hoped he didn't notice. "Sit." He did. Slowly, cautiously. His shoulders hunched forward, his hands clasped together between his knees like a man awaiting judgment. I stayed standing at first, clutching the edge of the table like it could anchor me. He glanced up, catching me studying him, and for a fleeting second, his eyes softened, like he was embarrassed to be seen this way. "Why are you doing this?" he asked. "What?" "Talking to me. Letting me sit here instead of—" He broke off, his voice trailing like he didn't want to say the word police. I swallowed hard. "Because you don't look like you want to be here any more than I want you to be." That earned the smallest twitch of a smile. Barely there, but real. The silence stretched again, charged and uncertain. I realized my arm still ached from clutching the lamp earlier, so I let it drop and moved to the kitchen, needing something to do with my hands. "Tea?" I asked. The absurdity of the question hit me as soon as I said it. Who offers tea to the man who just broke into their home? But Alex only blinked. Then, after a pause, he nodded. I busied myself with the kettle, trying to ignore the way his gaze followed me across the room. My skin prickled under it, not from fear, but from something sharper, something dangerously close to curiosity. When I returned with 2 mismatched mugs, I set one in front of him. His fingers brushed mine as he took it. The touch was brief, accidental, but it landed like a spark. I pulled back too quickly, hoping he hadn't noticed the way my breath hitched. He had. I saw it in the way his eyes lingered on me a second too long. "So, Daniel," he said, rolling my name like he was testing how it felt, "why do you live alone?" The question was casual, but it struck deep. "Because it's easier than living with someone who doesn't really see you." His gaze sharpened, curious. "And now you're letting a stranger sit in your living room? Maybe strangers see more than the people who are supposed to." The words slipped out before I could stop them, and the silence that followed was thicker than before. Alex didn't look away. He studied me, his expression unreadable, until I felt heat crawl up my neck. I tried to steady myself by sipping the tea, but the mug rattled against the saucer as my hand shook. He noticed that too. "You're scared," he said softly. I met his eyes. "Of you." "No. Of yourself." The honesty in his tone cut deeper than anything else could have. I set the mug down, unable to hold his gaze any longer. My chest tightened with a cocktail of emotions I couldn't name. Fear, yes, but also recognition. Something in the way he looked at me felt too close, too raw. He leaned back on the couch, stretching his arms along the backrest, as though claiming the space. My eyes betrayed me, tracing the way his hoodie clung to his frame, the rise and fall of his chest. I forced myself to look away, but not before he caught me. The corner of his mouth curved again, not quite a smile, but something knowing. I swallowed hard. "You should leave soon." "Do you want me to?" His voice was steady, almost challenging. The answer caught in my throat. Logic screamed yes. but the weight pressing against my ribs said otherwise. "I don't know," I admitted. That was the truth. And judging by the flicker in his eyes, it was enough. The kettle clicked behind us, a sharp reminder of reality. But neither of us moved. The night had already shifted. Whatever this was, it wasn't just a robbery anymore. It was something precarious, fragile, and unspoken. Something too close to be nothing. I didn't think I'd ever see him again. After that strange, sleepless night, I half convinced myself it had been a fever dream, a surreal collision between loneliness and danger. A burglar who sat on my couch and drank tea instead of running off with my belongings. A man whose eyes lingered like he wasn't sure whether to apologize or stay. But a week later, there he was. I spotted him first, leaning against the brick wall of the alley behind my building. Hoodie pulled up, head bent, hands shoved deep into his pockets. I froze mid-step, the grocery bag heavy in my hand. For a second, instinct screamed to turn around, to pretend I hadn't seen him. But then he looked up. Our eyes met, and everything inside me stilled. "Daniel." His voice was quiet, almost uncertain. "Alex." He gave a faint, crooked smile, as if saying my name out loud confirmed something he wasn't sure he had the right to feel. I should have been furious. He'd broken into my home. He had no right to stand here, waiting for me like we had unfinished business. But anger never came. What came instead was the same strange pull I'd felt that night, the sense that running from him would be harder than staying. So I didn't run. We walked. Not side by side at first, more like two men orbiting each other, keeping just enough space between us. The city stretched around us, neon bleeding into shadows, the pavement slick from an earlier rain. Neither of us said much. And yet the silence wasn't empty. It pressed in, filled with things we couldn't name. Every so often, I'd glance at him, and every time, I found him already looking back. Finally, on a deserted stretch of street, I asked, "Why are you here?" He exhaled, staring ahead. "I don't know. Maybe because you didn't look at me like I was trash." The honesty in his tone startled me. I slowed, forcing him to do the same. "Is that how most people look at you?" A beat of silence. Then, softer, "Yeah." He didn't elaborate. And I didn't push. Something in me knew he wasn't ready to spill everything. Maybe he never would. But his admission sat between us like a fragile truth, raw and unpolished. We ended up on a bench in the park, the city lights glowing faintly behind the trees. I sat with the groceries at my feet, watching the way his hands fidgeted in his lap. "You should hate me," Alex murmured. "Maybe," I said honestly. "But I don't." He turned to look at me, and the moment stretched. His eyes weren't sharp now, they were searching. Almost pleading. The silence that followed was heavy, but not uncomfortable. It was the kind of silence that hummed with unsaid words, with questions neither of us dared to voice. A breeze lifted, carrying the faint scent of rain-soaked earth. His shoulder brushed mine, just barely, but the contact lingered in my awareness long after. I didn't pull away. Neither did he. It struck me then how strange this was. A week ago, I'd been staring at him in my living room, a lamp raised in shaky defense. Tonight, I was sitting shoulder to shoulder with him in the dark, as if we'd known each other longer than we had any right to. I told myself it was madness. I told myself this connection wasn't real, that it was just adrenaline's aftertaste. But the longer I sat there, the more I realized it wasn't madness, it was recognition. Something in him mirrored something in me. Loneliness, restlessness, the quiet ache of being unseen. And maybe that was why I didn't move when his hand, trembling slightly, rested near mine on the bench. Close enough that if I shifted just an inch, our fingers would touch. I didn't. Not yet. Instead, I let the silence keep speaking for us. When he finally rose, the night had deepened, and my groceries had gone warm at my feet. "See you around?" he asked, voice barely more than a whisper. The question lingered in the cool air. I should have said no. I should have cut this strange thread before it tangled any further. But I found myself nodding. Yeah. See you around. As he walked away, his shadow stretching long across the pavement, I realized something had shifted again. I wasn't afraid of him anymore. I was afraid of what I was starting to feel. It happened again on another sleepless night. I just settled on the couch with a book when there was a knock at the door, 3 soft raps, hesitant, almost apologetic. My chest tightened even before I stood. I already knew who it was. When I opened the door, Alex stood there, hands in his pockets, hood pulled up like he was trying to shrink into the shadows. His eyes met mine, uncertain but asking. I didn't ask why. I just stepped aside. He came in quietly, the air shifting as it always did when he entered my space. The room felt smaller, charged. He sat on the couch like he had the first night, but this time, there was no backpack, no mask, just Alex. I joined him. The silence stretched, familiar now, but no less heavy. I watched the way his hands twisted together, restless. He looked like a man carrying too much weight. You don't have to keep coming here, I said softly. I know. His voice was low, rough around the edges. But I don't have anywhere else. I feel like I can. The words landed in my chest like a stone dropped into water, rippling out. I'd been alone for so long that the thought of someone choosing to be here, even him, even under these strange circumstances, felt almost unbearable. Then stay, I whispered. He looked at me, startled. And then, slowly, something in his shoulders eased, like the invisible burden he carried slipped a fraction. We talked more than usual that night. About nothing, mostly. Music. Movies. Things that didn't matter but gave shape to the space between us. At one point, his voice cracked when he mentioned his family, and before I thought better of it, I reached across the cushion and placed my hand on his. The contact was meant to be small, comforting. But it didn't feel small. His hand stilled under mine, warm, solid. He didn't pull away. For a long, trembling moment, we sat there, connected by nothing more than that simple touch. And yet it felt like everything. My pulse raced, my breath shallow, as though my body understood before my mind dared to. He turned his palm slowly, letting our fingers brush, then rest together. It wasn't holding hands, not exactly, but it was closer than I ever imagined we'd allow ourselves. I should have withdrawn. Instead, I let the silence deepen, let the weight of his skin against mine burn into me. Finally, he whispered, Daniel. Just my name. But the way he said it, soft, tentative, like it mattered, made my throat tighten. I glanced at him, and our eyes locked. There was no mistaking it now. The pull, the awareness, the question neither of us had dared ask out loud. Before I could answer it, he pulled his hand away. The loss was sharp, immediate, like air rushing into a space that had been filled with something vital. He leaned back, running a hand over his face, his jaw tight. I shouldn't. Why not? I asked. My voice cracked on the words. He shook his head, unable to answer. His silence was louder than anything he could have said. I wanted to press, to demand clarity. But instead, I sat there, heart pounding, the ghost of his touch still alive on my skin. The night carried on in fragments after that. He stayed until the city quieted, then rose reluctantly, like he didn't want to leave but didn't know how to stay. At the door, he paused. His eyes found mine again, softer this time. Thank you for not making me feel like a mistake. Before I could respond, he was gone. I closed the door, leaning against it, my hand still tingling where his had been. It was just a touch, a fleeting connection, but it had stayed with me, settled into my chest, into my breath, into the part of me I thought was long gone. And I knew, with a clarity that scared me, nothing between us could go back to what it was. I couldn't stop thinking about the touch. 4 days, it haunted me. The warmth of Alex's hand under mine, the way his fingers lingered, the look in his eyes before he pulled away. It was like a ghost I carried in my chest, a memory that refused to fade. When the next knock came at my door, I didn't hesitate. I opened it too quickly, like I'd been waiting all along. Alex stood there again, same hood, same restless eyes. But tonight, he looked different, worn down, as if sleep had abandoned him too. You keep showing up, I said. My voice was steadier than I felt. Do you want me to stop? He asked. The question dug deep. If I said yes, maybe this ache inside me would quiet. If I said no, I was opening a door I might never be able to close again. Come in, I whispered instead. He stepped inside, his presence filling the small space with that same electricity. Tonight, though, he didn't sit right away. He paced, back and forth like a caged animal. His hands flexed, fists tightening and releasing as if he couldn't contain what churned inside him. Finally, he stopped, facing me. His chest rose and fell in sharp breath. Daniel, I can't figure out what the hell you've done to me. His words spilled out, raw, unpolished. I should have walked away the first night. I should have never come back. But, he broke off, dragging a hand through his hair. Every time I leave, I find myself back at your door. Like I don't know how to stay away. The admission knocked the air out of me. My body trembled, caught between fear and something far more dangerous. Alex, his name came out as nothing more than breath. He stepped closer. Not close enough to touch, but close enough that the distance felt like a living thing between us. You don't get it, he said, voice rough. I don't do this. I don't need anyone. And yet, his jaw clenched. You're under my skin, Daniel. You've been there since the second I walked into this apartment with a knife in my hand. The words shouldn't have made my heart race. But they did. I swallowed hard, struggling for something, anything, that could make sense of the storm in the room. Maybe it's not just me under your skin, I whispered. Maybe it's you finally realizing you don't want to be alone. The silence that followed was razor-sharp. His eyes burned into mine, furious and desperate all at once, like I'd exposed something he wasn't ready to face. He closed the gap then, sudden, startling. His hand slammed against the wall beside my head, caging me in without touching me. His breath was hot against my cheek, his body inches from mine. You don't know what you're saying, he growled, though his voice cracked, betraying him. My own voice shook, but I didn't look away. Then tell me what I am saying, Alex. Tell me why you keep coming back. His lips parted, a war raging behind his eyes. For a moment I thought he'd finally bridge the space, finally give in to what we both felt hanging between us. But instead, he shut his eyes and let his forehead fall against the wall beside me. His whole body trembled, as though the fight inside him was tearing him apart. I can't, he whispered. I should have been relieved. I should have been terrified. Instead, I felt only the sharp sting of need, the desperate want for him to stop holding back. Then don't say it, I said softly. Just stay. His breath hitched, his hand flexing against the wall like he wanted to pull away but couldn't. Finally, he dropped his arm and stepped back, his expression wrecked, unreadable. The moment broke, but the air between us stayed heavy, charged, thick with everything unsaid. He didn't leave. He sat on the couch again, silent, shoulders tight. And I joined him, the two of us side by side, staring at the dark window as if it might give us answers. Neither of us spoke. We didn't need to. The confession was already in the room with us, alive and waiting. And I knew it was only a matter of time before silence wasn't enough. The silence stretched, thick and suffocating. Alex sat rigid on the couch, staring at nothing, jaw tight as if holding back words he'd never let escape. I sat beside him, every nerve in my body screaming at me to move, to touch him, to do something reckless. But I didn't. Not at first. I only watched him, the twitch of his fingers, the way his chest rose and fell too fast, the darkness flickering in his eyes. Finally, he spoke. You think I don't want this. His voice was rough, unsteady. You think I don't feel it. But if I let myself, if I touch you the way I want to, there's no going back. His words struck like lightning, setting every nerve aflame. I leaned closer, my voice low, deliberate. Then maybe we shouldn't go back. His head snapped toward me, eyes blazing. For a heartbeat, neither of us moved. The air between us pulsed, alive, unbearable. Then he grabbed me. It wasn't gentle. His hand fisted in my shirt, dragging me toward him with a violence born of desperation. Our mouths collided, a clash of hunger and restraint breaking apart all at once. His kiss was fire, rough, consuming, every ounce of frustration poured into it. I gasped against him, and he swallowed the sound, his grip tightening like he was terrified I'd vanish if he let go. My own hands rose without thought, clutching at him, pulling him closer, as if the world outside didn't exist anymore. The kiss deepened, messy and raw, until I was breathless. He pushed me back against the couch, his body pressing into mine, heavy, grounding, unstoppable. For the first time since the night he broke into my home, Alex wasn't running. He was here, with me, giving in to the very thing he'd fought so hard to deny. When he finally tore his mouth from mine, his breath was ragged, forehead pressed to mine. "Daniel," he rasped, voice breaking. "This is wrong." I shook my head, my hands still tangled in his hoodie, refusing to let him pull away. "Then why does it feel like the only thing that's ever been right?" His eyes squeezed shut, a pained sound escaping him. He hovered there, trembling, as if torn in half. And then, he kissed me again. Softer this time. Desperate, yes, but laced with something deeper, something that frightened him more than lust, tenderness. The shift undid me. My heart cracked open, spilling into the space between us. Every touch, every brush of his lips, told me he wasn't just giving in to desire. He was giving in to need. But just as quickly, he tore himself away, stumbling back as if burned. God damn it. His hands flew to his hair, tugging hard. His chest heaved, his whole body shaking. What the hell are we doing? I rose slowly, my own body still buzzing with the shock of him, the taste of him lingering like sin on my lip. "We're doing what we should have done the second you walked through my door," I said quietly. His head snapped toward me, eyes wild, torn between fury and longing. "You don't get it," he snarled. "If I stay, if I keep touching you like this, I'll ruin everything. You'll hate me for it. I'll hate myself for it." I stepped closer, fearless now. The storm in him only made me want him more. "You're already ruining me, Alex. Every night you knock, every time you look at me like that, I can't breathe without wondering if you'll come back." His chest rose and fell harder, his gaze flicking to my mouth, betraying him. I pressed on, my voice steady despite the quake in my chest. "So either stop coming here, or admit you don't want to." The challenge hung between us. He stared at me, torn open, every barrier he'd built crumbling under the weight of what burned between us. And then, slowly, he closed the distance. His hand cupped my face, trembling but firm, his thumb brushing my cheek with a tenderness that nearly undid me. "I should walk away," he whispered. "Then why aren't you?" I breathed. His answer was another kiss. This one wasn't violent or desperate. It was inevitable. Slow, deep, a surrender he couldn't deny anymore. His lips moved with mine in a rhythm that spoke more than words ever could. This wasn't just want. This was a confession. When he finally pulled back, his eyes locked on mine, dark and unguarded. "I'm in too deep," he said hoarsely. And before I could answer, before I could tell him I was already drowning too, he turned and walked out the door. The click of it shutting behind him left me hollow, reeling, wrecked. But one truth burned brighter than all the fear. He would be back. I couldn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I felt him again, Alex's mouth on mine, the press of his body, the raw desperation that turned into tenderness before he ripped himself away. My chest ached with it, a burn that no cold air or empty room could soothe. I lay there in the dark, staring at the ceiling, half hoping, half dreading that knock at the door. It never came. By morning, the silence was unbearable. My apartment felt smaller, lonelier, as if every shadow whispered his name. Coffee tasted bitter. The shower did nothing to wash him off my skin. I couldn't focus on work. I barely remembered answering emails. All I could think about was him. By the third day, I broke. I found myself outside his building, hands stuffed deep in my pockets, heart hammering like I was about to commit a crime. The door buzzed open for someone else, and suddenly I was inside, climbing the stairs 2 at a time before doubt could catch up. When he opened the door, he looked wrecked. His hair was a mess, his hoodie clung to him like he hadn't changed in days, and his eyes, God, his eyes, were bloodshot, haunted. "Daniel," he said, voice rough with sleep or maybe regret. I didn't wait for permission. I stepped inside, brushing past him, refusing to let him hide behind the door. His apartment was sparse, just a couch, a mattress on the floor, and the faint smell of smoke. It suited him, temporary, as if he never intended to stay. 3 days, I said, turning on him. You kissed me, and then you disappeared for 3 days. His jaw clenched, muscles ticking. I told you it was wrong. And I told you it felt right. My voice cracked, sharper than I intended. So which one are you going to believe? He flinched, looking away, shoulders tightening like he was holding himself together with strings ready to snap. Daniel, his voice dropped, ragged. I don't know how to want you without destroying you. My heart stuttered. He wasn't denying it anymore. He wasn't pretending he didn't feel it. He was admitting the very thing I feared, that his desire for me came wrapped in danger, in promises he couldn't keep. I stepped closer, my chest nearly brushing his. Then maybe I want to be destroyed. The words shocked even me, but once spoken, there was no pulling them back. His head snapped up, eyes locking on mine with a fire I'd never seen so naked, so unguarded. Don't say that, he growled. Don't make me believe it's okay to touch you again. I swallowed, the air between us charged, my body screaming for him. What if I want you to? For a heartbeat, the room went still. His breathing quickened, chest rising and falling with a violence that matched the storm in his eyes. He looked at me like I was both salvation and ruin. And then, he shattered. In 2 steps he had me against the wall, his hands braced beside my head, his mouth crushing mine. This kiss wasn't hesitation, wasn't testing the waters. It was need, raw and unrelenting, pouring every ounce of restraint he'd fought into the fire he could no longer contain. I gasped against him, clutching at his hoodie, dragging him closer until there was no space between us. His body was hard, solid, trembling with barely controlled hunger. Every movement was frantic, like he needed to consume me before he lost the courage again. Alex, my voice broke between kisses, but I didn't stop him. I couldn't. He pulled back just enough to look at me, his thumb brushing my swollen lip. His eyes were wild, but softer than I'd ever seen them, as if he was letting me see every wound he carried. I can't stop, he whispered. God help me, I can't stop. Then don't. It was all the permission he needed. He kissed me again, deeper, slower this time, as if memorizing me. His hand cupped the back of my neck, grounding me, while the other found my waist, pulling me into him like I belonged there. Every touch was electric, sending shivers through my veins. For the first time, there was no wall between us. No denial. No lies. Just him, broken and burning, and me, foolish enough to welcome the fire. Minutes blurred into something timeless. When we finally broke apart, our foreheads pressed together, both gasping for breath, the silence between us wasn't empty anymore. It was heavy with truth. I searched his eyes, desperate for something solid, something real. Tell me this means something. His grip tightened, almost painful. It means everything, he said, voice shaking. And that's what scares the hell out of me. My chest ached, torn between triumph and terror. He'd admitted it, laid himself bare. But even as he held me, I could feel the weight of his fear pressing in, the fear of who he was, what he'd done, what loving me might cost. Still, I refused to let go. I pressed my lips to his again, softer this time, a vow whispered in silence. When he finally pulled away, His hand lingered on my face, thumb tracing my jaw like he was memorizing it. His eyes were softer now, but filled with a promise I couldn't yet name. "I don't know how this ends," he said quietly, "but I know I'll keep coming back." And then, for once, he didn't leave. He stayed. We sat together in the dim light of his apartment, our shoulders touching, the weight of the world outside pressing in but held at bay for now. It wasn't peace. It wasn't safety. But it was something real, something ours, and for that moment it was enough.